Hi, this is Andres, and today I want to show you a pattern I use to build complex processes using Power Automate. The goal is to avoid having those big messy flows and instead build it in a more decoupled fashion, having little flows that together fulfill this bigger functionality. The advantages are going to go from being easier to develop, to maintain, and to extend newer functionalities to, of course, having an easier way of doing error handling. So before jumping into the technical explanations, I want to provide you with a little bit of context, and we will build from here the rest of the explanation. So in this scenario, what we are going to do is certify that an employee passes an exam after attending a course, in this case about safety in the workplace. The technologies are very simple. You probably are already familiar with them. So the employee is going to submit a Microsoft Forms with a questionnaire, and then this is going to trigger the whole process. The process will consist on basically Power Automate, handling these forms response, and then persisting that in SharePoint, then doing some calculations to get the score and perform actions based on if the employee has passed or failed the certification exam. Now, I advocate for Dataverse a lot, but for this particular scenario, it's so little that it is completely justified and even better if we based all the development upon SharePoint Online. Great, so let's see the actual demo working before jumping into the details on how the flows are made. Now, so we have these Microsoft Forms ready here, and I'm going to just respond to everything randomly without even looking at the answers. Of course, these questions were done with the Copilot functionality just to save some time, and then I'm going to hit submit. Great, and here we go. Now we have the SharePoint list where we are storing the information. I'm going to refresh, and soon we will get the response. Here we go. This has been submitted. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the columns that we have here. These columns are basically the ones controlling the process itself, and these other columns, they are just for the technical explanation. Now, in these columns, what we have is what is the employee, this random data that's auto-generated. Then we have the status of the process. So we have submitted the response, right? And right now we haven't done any calculations, anything. But if I just let it refresh, here we go. By itself now, the next state has been triggered, and the stage of the process is that the exam has been failed because the score is 77, which is lower than 80, which is the minimum score to pass the exam. Now allow me to manually change this. So I'm going to put this as an 87, and then I'm going to change the status to exam passed. Here we go. Okay, so leave me alone here. I'm going to be refreshing again. Now, here we go. So now we see the status has changed to user certified because we have passed the exam, so something has happened, and then the user, the employee, is certified. Wait a moment to see what has happened, because if we go to this column, the first status, you'll see that we have these four kind of the stages, right, that this process goes from. So first we submit the form request, then we either pass the exam or fail it, fail or pass, and then if we have passed the exam, then we have to certify the user and do whatever it is, generate the word, what we talked about before. Now, how would you build this in a big message flow? I want to know. Let's see how it works with a state machine pattern, which is very easy to implement. And once you see it, well, I think it's going to make your life a lot easier. Great, so let's get technical here and talk about how this is built and understand the pattern. So what we have is a solution with only 4 flows, but instead of a big flow, we have 4 flows, which more or less, it doesn't have to be this way, but more or less coincides a little bit with the different stages that we have in this process. So going back to here, we have get forms response, which will get the information from the forms response and persist it into SharePoint. Then we will calculate the exam score, and based on the results from the calculation, we will do something if the exam is failed, or something if the exam is passed, which is going to be just that Word document, etc. So what we are doing is, instead of having a linear process, let's say we have a process that depends on what's the stage right now for this particular record. And this can be extended to multiple columns. We can make it as complex as we want, but in the essence, it's just a state machine, meaning that when state of this record changes, I'm going to do something, and together we are going to make sense in the state so that we fulfill the bigger process or mission of this record, which is certify an employee. So let's take a look. First, the forms response. This doesn't have any mystery here. We are going to get the details from forms, and then we're going to basically only create the SharePoint list item. Basically, the employee is a random number here for demo, but the important thing is here the process. The process status is submitted. What we saw in the demo before is just submitted. We don't worry about anything else. Just get the form details, submit it into SharePoint. Our job is done with this flow. Now next, what we're going to do is calculate the score. And here, this is a simplified version of what we would do in real life. But basically what we have is React. The trigger is always going to be from now on only when a SharePoint item is created or modified. And what we do is control here with the trigger conditions if the process status value is submitted. Because if it's submitted, we are going to do the calculation. That's the only time where we are going to do that. And here the calculation is a random between 60 and 100. In real life, what we would do is have several actions in this place where we would do the calculations and maybe have even ponderations, different weights of each response, or whatever we want to, however we want to complicate things. And then in the end, what we're going to do is if the score is greater or equals than 80, we're going to set the exam as passed. And what we do is basically store the exam score and the value, the process status value, as exam passed. Otherwise, we're going to, of course, store the score as well, but then set the status to exam failed. And this is what we are going to see here in this column where we were seeing before. And guess what? Now we have another flow, separate flow, whose only job is to react when the exam has been passed. So the status is this one, exam passed. And this is going to be, well, we would do whatever we want to do. The trigger conditions is going to be exam is passed. And then we will do these actions that we were talking at the beginning. Generate the certificate, verify the user. This is not done, of course, just for the demo sake. And in the end, what we're going to do is set the process status to user certified, which would be in this case the end of the process. So what we are seeing is that we, instead of having a big flow handling everything, what we have is separate flows that are built easier, because if I am developing or working with one of these flows, my job is only solve the problem of here calculate the exam score. This is a simple problem rather than having all the process in one page, and it's going to be easier to change things here on how the calculation is done, or whatever steps. If I need to get from a database the weights of each response, whatever we want to do, it's only contained in this flow, and we don't worry about anything else from the process. And then when I'm working on what happens when the exam is passed, maybe send an email, create that Word document, transform it into PDF, start in SharePoint, whatever we want to do, it's only contained in here. And even this, we could break it down into maybe child flows or other sub-processes as well. And that's that. I hope I did a good job explaining you this pattern, how to work with states in Power Automate, and I hope also that this is going to be useful for you in the future. You learn a new way of working with the tools. Of course, it's the tip of the iceberg. We have more advanced things of doing things with, for example, with custom actions, especially if we are working with Dataverse. If you're interested, let me know in the comments, and I will take that into account for further videos. And well, thanks again. Hey, please hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments what you think about the whole thing. Thanks, and see you soon.